Hello everybody. Today we're going to take a look at making a new game in Unity with the help of ChatGPT and the new GPTs feature from ChatGPT 4 Turbo that came out in November 2023. My name is JJ from Mythical City Games, and I thought this would be a good tutorial to kind of showcase what's possible with ChatGPT right now and some of the AI systems out there to make games, and also what are some of the limitations and kind of the issues that you're going to come across if you try to use this for game development. So to start off, what I thought we would do is maybe make a simple game that is based on one of our previous games. So we've recently released a game called Snow Fortress 2. That's a VR game. Would be interesting is to kind of make a PC version of that game that you play as the enemies from the VR version. So in the VR version, you are protecting a town or a snow fort that you build. You get to build a fort with blocks of snow and ice, and then protected from armies of snowmen that are attacking. And in the PC version, which we're going to call Snow Fortress Rush, the idea is that you are one of the attacking snowmen trying to get through the enemy fort. So this is going to be probably a multi-part video because the development of this is going to take a little bit of time. And we're going to try to use generative AI like ChatGPT and GitHub Copilot for as much of the code as possible and as much of the instructions as possible. Now, this will still require some understanding of Unity and programming to be able to really understand what the AIs are generating. And because some of their instructions may not be very clear, some of their code might be conflicting, you still need to have an understanding of some of the systems to be able to really put it all together. The more complicated the game project gets, the more complicated the code base is, the bigger it is, the worse the AI systems are at generating. So they don't have a really great way of keeping track of a large base of code, at least in sort of these publicly available systems like ChatGPT. So let's start off here. What I've done is I've created a new Unity project, and this I've imported in a little bit of an environment from Snow Fortress and some of the assets from Snow Fortress. So we've got ourselves some of our models here, like our snow blocks, snowballs, our snowmen also. So you can see there's a little snowman model. This is all from our game, and so we want to try to keep the same environment. But of course, you could use any assets of your own. The concepts of this will transfer to pretty much any other sort of art assets. So I've created a basic scene with just a little bit of an environment here. So you can take a look at this. There's a little bit of a town. And what we're going to do is want to protect this. This town will be protected by a snow fort that maybe we could procedurally generate, and you will be controlling a little snowman who's trying to break in. So let's go ahead and start. The first thing that we're going to need to do is ask the AI for maybe movement controls. And since this is an action game, let's go over to our AI chat. So we'll start with ChatGPT. And what I've done is I've created a new GPT. So that's one of their new features where you can kind of create a custom assistant in ChatGPT. So I've customized this one to work with Unity 2022, which is what we're using, and to be focused on giving technical advice, code, and to be able to give us instructions and step-by-step for how to do this. So first thing, let's ask the AI how we can get started with controlling the character. So I've come up with an initial prompt here for my GPT. And so I'm making a 3D real-time action game that lets the player control a snowman character, move the character, and control snowballs. The game has a physics element where the player can attack snow forts made out of blocks of snow that can be knocked over. And can you create a script for the snowman control and movement? Give me details on how to set up the snowman prefab. The snowman should move with WASD keys and rotate with the mouse in third-person controller style, where we use the mouse movement delta to rotate the snowman. Now, the more details that you provide, the better the AI will work. So you want to try to give it a lot of information. If you don't give it a lot, it's sort of going to guess about things, and sometimes it's okay, and it can give you a nice starting point, or it can help you come up with ideas for things that you might not have thought of. And you can always fine tune it as well. You can ask for more details. You can ask it to change something that you don't like, of course. So let's see how that will be done. So now I've gone ahead and submitted that, and it's come up with some instructions here and some code for us, and just finishing up that. So let's go ahead and get started while it's writing on that code. So model import and create a prefab. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So we have our model here. I've imported them under this folder. So here's a little snowman guy. Let's put him down into the scene so we can take a look at him. He's not quite set up correctly yet, so this is just freshly imported. Let's go ahead and set up his textures and material and everything. So you can see this is the actual mesh renderer. So whenever you get a new model, say if you have one designed for it, if you purchase something, it will usually come with a model, and if it has animations, it'll come with the animations as well as materials and textures. So in this case, we have all of that. Let's go ahead and assign the material to the snowman, and then his hat is also missing material, so let's assign that. Snowman. There you go. Now he looks a lot better. Okay, so now we've got a little snowman here. Let's see what the next step is. Okay, drag the snowman into the scene, adjust its size, rotation, position. That's great. Once done, drag the snowman and the scene back to the assets path to create a prefab. Okay, so we've got ourselves a little empty prefab folder. I usually like to organize my prefabs that way. And to create a prefab, we just drag that in here, and now it creates a prefab. And if you don't know, a prefab is just an object that you can respawn or kind of create multiple copies of in the game. So usually it's great practice to kind of have a lot of your things as prefabs. For example, these trees should be prefabs so that you don't have to edit each one individually, so you can also spawn them, create them. For example, snowballs will be prefabs. It's anything that you will kind of instantiate as the game is going, but also kind of makes your life easier if you need to modify or change a bunch of things that that are all based on the same object. So it's good to learn about the prefab system in Unity. So now that that's become a prefab, it's blue, and that shows us this is actually linked to a prefab. So we've done this step. Let's go ahead and see what's next. Okay, add components. We need a rigid body for physics interactions and a collider, like a capsule collider for collision. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. All right. So we want to actually edit the prefab itself, not this instance of it that's already in the scene. Although we can do that by going into prefab mode with this little arrow, and now we're inside prefab mode. So we're actually editing the original prefab, and we can go ahead and do that. So for example, capsule collider, I've already got that ready. And let's move that up. There we go. The height's a little bit better. Okay, that's good for now. And then let's get ourselves a rigid body. So this way he'll be able to have physics interactions. Now, one of the things with rigid bodies is that because this is a capsule and this is going to be physically interactive, if we just let him go, he will tumble and roll over. So if we take a look at that, it's not exactly what we want him to do. Yeah. So in that case, what we need is, since this is a player character and we don't really want them to be able to rotate along these two axes, so we don't really need them to do that, and we don't need them to do that. We only want them to rotate left and right. In that case, we can lock his rotation on those axes. There's a couple of other ways of dealing with this too. They're more advanced, but this is sort of a simple way to get started at first. I often like to for main characters and things like that, improve the physics interactions by adding these extra settings, and then that way you'll be able to, they'll be a little bit more accurate in the interactions. Now, as you can see, some of these items have turned blue and bolded because I'm editing the instance of the prefab, not the prefab itself. So an easy way to get around that is to, once I've made a modification, I can right click and apply that to the prefab. So let's go ahead and do that for all the ones I've modified. And now they disappear, and they are part of the original prefab if you go in here. You can see the changes are there. Okay, great. So now I'm going to go ahead and save that, and let's go on to our next step. So now you will need a C# script to handle the movement and rotation. Here's a script. Okay, so looks like he's created a bit of a script here for us. That's going to take input. So let's go ahead and copy that. And it's called Snowman Controller. So now I'll go to a scripts folder, create a new C# script. Snowman Controller. It's compiling that. Let's go ahead and open up that script. I'm using VS Code, Visual Studio Code, for my IDE, but of course use anything else you're familiar with or you prefer. Let's go ahead and paste in that script over top of what the original was, and then we'll save that. And so this is using the old Unity input system. And the reason the AI is selected to do this is because that's kind of the most common examples of code out there. So the AI, since it learned on examples of code that were on the internet, the more common examples are going to be using this old input system, input.getAccess. Unity has a new input system that's more flexible and powerful, and you can ask the AI to help you set that up, but it's a little bit more complicated and beyond the context of this video. All right, let's go take a look at how this works. And of course, if you wanted to do that, or you wanted to use a specific type of technology or specific framework, you have to specify that, because otherwise it's just going to guess as to what you want and kind of come up with maybe the simplest option as well. And let's see what actually the next step is. So you need to script to handle the movement and how to use the script. Okay, here we go. Attach the Snowman controller script to your Snowman prefab. All right, let's go back to Unity. Let's go to our prefab editing mode and attach the script. You can add components, Snowman controller. We've got a movement speed, a rotation speed, so we can adjust those as we need. We'll save that. Let's see what else. Okay, yeah. Wait, control. Ensure your scene has a main camera attached as main camera, as the script uses that for mouse rotation calculations. Okay. In that case, we need the camera to be tagged as main camera. Let's see if that's the case. So we've got ourselves a camera in here, and it is tagged as main camera. Okay. If not, you can just go through here and you can select a tag for the camera. Okay, so that's in there. And then I guess we can give it a try. What I'm gonna do is just, let's put the game view here so that we can see the actual game view. Okay, and there we go. Now he's moving around. It's kind of stiff looking, and the camera is not attached to him, so that's something we're gonna need to do. It looks like he's moving towards the mouse. So of course we can adjust any of those values until we find that something that works better. So maybe the rotation speed, let's put that up to 1,000, and then he kind of more instantly rotates. Okay, moves towards the mouse. Okay, but maybe that's not the kind of movement that we want. Instead of moving towards the mouse position, let's see if we can ask him to get him to move by using the mouse movement to rotate kind of left and right. So let's go ahead and stop that and go back to our ChatGPT. Yes, we do want to fine tune the movement. Okay, so something that is more typical of a third person kind of movement controller. And so this is kind of a great example of how you end up working with a lot of these sort of AI systems. By default, it's really not going to be able to guess exactly what you want. So of course, if I provide a little bit more detail, a little more explanation about how I want this rotation to work, it would be able to get that from the first try. But a lot of times you're kind of don't think of that, or it takes a while to sort of explain it all. So it's kind of fun to try it out and see what it comes up with. And sometimes actually it comes up with actually interesting other options that might inspire you. But if it doesn't, and if something's not working the way that you want it to work, then you can always ask for clarification and update the script a little bit. And so that's what we're doing here. Okay, so it's made some changes. Let's go ahead and copy that code. In this case, it's provided us the entire script again, which makes it easy to just sort of paste over this. But once your scripts get more complicated, it's going to start to present to you just the sections that you should change, which may require you to kind of look a little bit more carefully of what is being changed and what isn't, rather than getting the entire script again. Okay, so let's take a look at it. Attach the script to your snowman, run the game, test with the keys while rotating. All right, let's go ahead and go to our script editor. And we're just gonna replace the old script with the new one. Go back into Unity, and this will recompile the project. And let's take a look at the result. Okay, well, now I think we're rotating. There we go. Just with the mouse movement. So here's a little snowman, and I can just kind of turn him with the mouse left and right. This way I can also strafe, go back, while keeping his orientation facing that way. Cool. Okay, great. Now he's a little stiff, so let's get his animations working. Great. Now let's add his animations. I already have an animation controller and several animations set up. Now, one of the other interesting benefits of ChatGPT 4 is the ability to use vision. And this has really improved the way you can work with things like Unity, that's a very visual-based system with AI. Because before the vision element, you would have to describe everything in detail in text, and it's really hard to describe some of these things. For example, we're going to take a look at the animations here in the animation controller. So our little snowman has a few animations with him. He's got this little animation controller that controls how the animations split. In here, the animator. So now we've got an animation system here. We've got some parameters. We've got different layers of our animations. It's kind of complicated. So if you don't really know how this works, there's a really great way to get started, and that is to use screenshots. So what I can do now is take a bunch of screenshots. So for example, we're going to do one of this base layer to show how it's set up. So I'm going to take that screenshot of all of the different elements. Let's take screenshots of the next one here. There we go. And make sure when you're taking these screenshots, you sort of only take whatever is actually needed. Don't take screenshots of the entire screen, because it's going to be hard for the AI to figure out what you're looking at and what is the important part that you want to tell it. Okay, so also we have these parameters here, and we have a blend mode. So this is also important to show it. Okay, so we got that, and we got our parameters. Let's take another screenshot of that. And we've got a couple of little screenshots here. So let's go back to ChatGPT. I've started typing in the message, but let's attach our files. So I'm just going to grab these from my desktop, and we'll just upload. And I've attached screenshots of the current setup. Create a script. Add animations to the snowman controller. And this is really quite fantastic, this ability to be able to just show it a picture of something rather than just trying to convey it with text. Because it actually really can look at this whole picture, all the pictures, it can figure out how this all works, all the text that's inside there. And from that, it's got the parameters and everything set up. Now let's see if it gets everything right right off the bat like that. It is quite a complex setup, but it may require a little bit of fine tuning. So let's see what happens. Okay, so in this case, it's also decided to regenerate the entire script for us, which does make it easy for us, but does take a little bit longer for the AI to generate that. Let's go ahead and copy that over. It's going to provide a little description of what everything is. And this is a great way to actually learn about how these systems work, because it sort of describes what it's done. So let's take a look. Okay, in this case, we can just select everything and paste over top of it. So we've got a couple of new changes here with this animator. It's given us a few extra steps here to make sure we follow. So we have to have an animator attached. The animator has to have the animation controller that we've set up. And these parameters have to match. So example, walk speed, which we do already have in here, walk speed. I'm not sure if the space is going to matter in there because it's just walk speed here, but let's give it a try. All right, so we've got our animator, but we don't have our animation controller added. So let's go ahead and edit the prefab, drag in our animation controller, which is this part here. We'll save the prefab and let's give it a try. Okay, so his idle animation is working, which is great. Now let's see about his movement. His movement animation is not working. So that might be because the animator, the walk speed, as it's called here, is different. It's got a space in between, and in our script, it does not have a space in it. So let's add that space in here. Now we could do it the other way around, where we could just actually change this animator, but since it was set up this way, let's not mess with the animator. All right. Now this is something, if you weren't able to figure out kind of why it happened, what the issue was, then you could of course ask the AI about it. So now you can see he's got a little walking animation. So that's great every time we're moving. Otherwise he goes back to his idle animation. Perfect. Okay, cool. So now let's go ahead and attach the camera, because as you can see, the camera is just floating off here, unrelated to the snowman. And of course we want our camera following him in sort of a third-person perspective. So let's go back to our AI. Okay, great. Thank you. Let's add let's add the camera to follow the snowman. Use the Cinemachine system. Give camera the most stability. The Cinemachine system is kind of something that was added to Unity a few years ago. It's sort of an optional way of controlling cameras with giving them much more built-in controls, so you can visually adjust the cameras and do a lot of really nice camera effects with them. You don't really need to use that necessarily to have to do what we want to do, but it will give the game more flexibility for the future. So it's good to specify that, because otherwise it'll probably just manually control the camera by writing some code for it, which might be simpler, but in the long term, camera controls can get quite complicated. We can also clarify. Okay, so let's give it an example. We can try to describe exactly how it should look, but again, now that we have this vision system available, let's go ahead and show the AI what kind of camera view we're looking for. So in this case, I'm kind of going for something like this. It's a bit of like an action RPG, third-person sort of view here. So a little bit above, maybe even a little bit higher, and of course we can tweak all that. But this is just to give a reference point of view. So again, we're going to take a screenshot of this, and to give some perspective and some reference here. And let's bring that screenshot into ChatGPT. Here's an example screenshot. Now, working with images is a little bit slower. You're going to notice that ChatGPT responses are going to be a little bit slower. It does take a little bit of time for it to process the image. But let's go ahead and give it that time, and we can see what happens. So it's already started with how to set up Cinemachine camera. Okay, so install. If you haven't already installed it, you'll need to add it to your project. So window package manager. Now I've already done that, but I'll still show where that's set up. So we've got our package manager here. And we've got our different packages here. Let's go and get the instructions. So package manager, select Unity registry from the dropdown, find Cinemachine and in the list and click install. Okay, that's pretty easy. So we've got your registry, we got Cinemachine, and there it is. I've already installed it, but you just click the little install button here, and then Cinemachine is now in your project. Okay, so we got to install. Once it's installed, go to Cinemachine in the menu bar and create virtual camera. This will create a new game object in your scene with the Cinemachine virtual camera component attached. Okay, sounds good. So let's add the new Cinemachine. So game object, Cinemachine, virtual camera. Okay, awesome. So it's created this virtual camera for us. And let's see how this works. Select the newly created Cinemachine virtual camera in your hierarchy and configure it. Follow. Drag your snowman character, specifically its transform, into the follow field. This tells the camera to follow your character. Look at. If you want the camera to always look at the snowman, drag the snowman's transform into the look at field as well. Okay. So that's something you can definitely adjust and tweak depending on how you want this to work. So in this case, we've got the follow here, and we want to follow the snowman. Okay. And this gives you a little real-time preview of what's happening. So clearly the camera is following, but it's not really looking at the right thing. So we also do want it to look at the snowman. Okay, there we go. So now here's the camera, and looking at the snowman. It's not really in a great perspective, but let's see what the rest of the instructions are. With the camera selected, you can adjust the properties for the desired perspective. In the inspector, find the body section, change the body to transposer. This will keep the movement camera to a consistent offset from the target. Okay, transposer, body, transposer. Okay, great. So we've got this offset right now. It's at the same height, but 10 meters behind the snowman. So we do want this to be up above. Does anyone have any suggestions here? For perspective between a god and third person, you might see a follow offset to have a higher value, Y value, to lift the camera up, and negative Z value to place the camera behind the snowman. Adjust the binding mode to look to target with world up for stable orientation. Okay, lock to target with world up, that's there. All right, so let's see, maybe about 5 meters above. We don't need them to be as far back, -3, -4, okay. Now he's looking straight down, pretty much, which is not exactly what we want either. But let's see if there's some more details about this here. For camera lens, in the lens section, you can adjust the field of view to more or less. Set the Dutch to 0 unless you want a tilted camera angle. So camera lens section here, we've got all kinds of options. I don't want to change any of those right now. And let's see, advanced configuration, you can adjust the damping and transposer. So it nicely describes all this. The aim settings allows you to control how the camera orients itself. The default composer can be fine-tuned to adjust the dead zone, soft zone, and other parameters. All right. So that's something we also do want to adjust. So the aim is now looking straight at the snowman. We actually want it to look forward a bit. So let's adjust this tracked object offset. So this gives us a little bit a way to offset this value. So now we can have it offset looking up or down. So in this case, we want it looking more forward to do that. And let's see, maybe looking kind of a meter up as well. It's 4. So now the snowman's a little bit out of our view. So let's move this back more, -4. That's a little bit better. Maybe -5. Yeah, that's a little bit better. And then we can look down a little more. And of course, you can just adjust this to your preferences. And there's a lot of little controls here, so you can adjust how smoothly the camera moves and everything. Let's go ahead and save that. Take a look if there's any other instructions. Test the game. It's important to experiment with the values, the settings, highly customizable. And of course, you can ask follow-up questions about all of this to adjust this camera settings more and learn how to use them. So let's go ahead and give it a try. Okay, so now we've got our snowman moving. There we go. The camera is attached to him, so now we can rotate the snowman, and we can slide left and right, forwards, backwards, and we can look around. And then the camera is sort of trying to keep up with our rotation. So we can play around with these values a little bit to see how this sort of aim works, how much it's dampened this movement. You can do lock to target, no roll, these kind of a lot of different options here. We can, for example, give a little bit of a look ahead time so we can predict the movement. If we want this, maybe turn off some of the damping. Okay, that just sort of moves now much smoother with him, with less of a delay. Now these values are not going to stay when you stop running the editor because Unity lets you just edit values while you're playing the game to experiment with things, but once you stop playing the game, it resets everything back to the values as they were when you clicked play. So in this case, Cinemachine actually has a little feature of save during play. And then now these settings should be saved to what we adjusted them to. Or perhaps, yeah, so now those are adjusted. So we can take a look at how those settings are. Okay, great. So this now has a camera setup. So this is a great first part of our project of how to set up a Snowball Snow Fortress PC game. And next we'll add in the snowballs, the throwing, and add in some stuff to be able to destroy and attack. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to check out Snow Fortress 2 on Steam, Pico, and Quest platforms. See you next time.